Well, this Sunday we get to hear the words from the book of wisdom. Now, before we jump into the some of the details of this reading that we're going to have, what is wisdom, by the way? Is it knowledge? Is it understanding? Well, wisdom is actually two things. It's actually a skill. So in order to have a skill, you have to know as well as do. So it's about knowing and doing combining. It's your brain and your hands coming together. Now, so wisdom, basically the style of the wisdom literature is little pithy sayings that help us to live a good life. That's basically the purpose of wisdom literature, or at least for the Greeks. Now, the Jewish people took this style of writing and then they're using it for a different purpose. And so they have pithy little sayings, not just to live a good life, but it's to have a relationship with God. And that's the idea of wisdom literature when we read in the Bible or when we're reading in the book of wisdom. All of these things are going to help us to have a better and deeper relationship with God. So that's the goal of wisdom literature. So let's take a look at what it has to say this Sunday. There is no God beside you. So the wisdom literature is addressing God here. You who have all, who care for all, that you need show that you have not unjustly condemned. Your might, your strength is the source of justice. Okay, so this is, so what does all this mean? Well, let's find out. We all know that God is just, or at least sometimes we think that, but when bad things happen, sometimes we doubt whether God is really just and fair, especially when good people suffer. So let's take a look at Job. Job was, so this Job, he has a wonderful life, and up in heaven, God has a court, and the prosecuting attorney goes to God and says, yeah, Job is a really nice guy, he's just and all that, but that's because you give him everything. Take everything away, and we'll see how good he is and see how righteous he is. And so God said, go ahead. So Job loses everything. And so what happens next is that three of Job's friends, who happen to be theologians, these are the three smartest people on the planet, come to Job to talk to Job about what happened. And their conclusion is that Job must have done something wrong because God is just. God wouldn't allow this to happen if God is just. So therefore, Job must have done something wrong. Now, we all know right at the beginning from the first chapter that they're wrong. That we know that Job is just. He's righteous because God said so. So the three smartest people in the world are wrong. So then there's a dialogue that takes place, and then Job, of course, responds to their advice by saying, "Oh, that can't be true because I haven't done anything wrong." And so Job's conclusion is that God is not just. He can't control everything, and otherwise Job would not have suffered all of these things. So we also find out that Job is wrong. So the three smartest theologians, they're wrong. Job is wrong because he doesn't think God is just. So God has to intercede here. And what God does is he has a whirlwind and brings Job up to his court. And what God is going to do at this moment is he's going to give a virtual tour of the universe to Job. So he goes and he shows Job all the wonderful things in creation. He says, have you ever seen these stars way over here in the farthest galaxy? Have you ever seen a deer give birth? Have you ever seen the Himalayan mountains after a snowfall in the morning sun? Do you ever see how I make a sunset? you want me to see how I take the ugliest creature in the world, a hairy caterpillar, and turn it into the most beautiful creature you've ever seen? And so God gives Job this whirlwind tour of the world. How many gallons of water it takes to fill an ocean? You know how many pounds of rock it takes to make a mountain? And God is giving him all of this. Why? So you say, why is God doing this? Why is God taking them around? And the reason why is this. God sees everything. Everything. Not just something. Because God sees all things because he created all things, and everything that God created is good. That's the beautiful thing. And the reason why he's doing this to Job is because Job only sees one thing. Himself. That's all he sees. He just sees his problems and his difficulties and his little bubble. And here is Job in his little bubble, all worried about his own self. And this little bubble is just a little dot in the universe and a little dot on the timeline that can just be gone poof in a second. And so what God does is he pulls Job out of this bubble to see the great things of God so he can enjoy those things. And which is a brilliant answer by God to these two groups of people that don't understand God and his justice and his wisdom. Do we not do that? Is that not what happens to us? Is when as soon as something goes wrong, something happens to us, we start to doubt whether God is just, or if God doesn't like us. Sometimes we even get mad at God and we get upset with God. You know what the problem is? We're only seeing one thing. We're in our little bubble. And what we need to do is we need to have the Job experience. Go out there and get out and see God's creation and the wonderful things that God does. Let me just give you I'm a fly fisherman. I love to fly fish. It's just a lot of fun to be in a river with your waders on. You see the bug life, and you catch these beautiful trout, and you let them go. So in our group, in the fly fishing world, we have two healing groups. One is it's called Healing Waters, or Casting for Recovery. And what these groups do in our fly fishing community is that we take people that have just received devastating news that they have cancer or something very difficult. A lot of women who have breast cancer, it's just the world is just destroyed. And what we do is they take people like this and bring them out, give them the Job experience, and they get to see, they catch a fish on a fly rod for the first time. They see bugs around, and they totally, completely don't forget about themselves and all of their problems when you're out and you're fly fishing. That's the great thing about fly fishing. So we need the Job experience. We need to have that experience when things go wrong, things go bad. But and then sometimes we just get stuck in our little world and we don't see anything beyond ourselves. And we need to have the vision of God. We need to have the eyes of God. We can see everything. So this is how wisdom helps us with our relationship with God. We're not angry at God anymore. We're not upset with God. We don't think that God is unjust. And so here, this saying here in wisdom, this beautiful reading that we're going to be hearing this Sunday, is that God is not unjust in his condemnation, for might is the source of justice. And he is, in your majesty, or over all things, makes you lenient to all. These are beautiful words that are going to help us with our relationship with God. Well, I hope this helps, especially if there's somebody in your life that is suffering from anything, that maybe this video will help them to have maybe a Job experience to help them to heal. And the best way to heal is to go beyond ourselves and to see the wonderful things that God has given us in our lives. So I hope you enjoy this video. I'll see you next week.